Whew. From the EPR Creation Studio, this is Jason Staples bringing you Unconquered with Doc Staples. As always, this podcast brought to you by EPR Creations, bringing you the best of internet marketing and website development for an affordable price by Shenandoah Newsma of Shenandoah Real Estate in the Research Triangle, by Luis Marquez of Momentum Realty in Jacksonville, Florida, by Garage Makeovers, the #1 garage remodeling company in South Florida, and by Justin Galloway of Benchmark Mortgage, serving Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Oh boy. Well, this still isn't a very good football team, but it finally has a win, 14-9 over California. And just looking at it, I mean, this was a lot closer to the football team that we kind of expected to see this year. Going out there, run first, really still having some difficulties, some limitations in the passing game, but generally pretty stubborn on defense and lots of pressure on the quarterback. Defensive line dominant in stretches. Seven sacks, 12 tackles for loss as a team, really, caused a lot of problems. And, they did give up some drives. They were way too generous on third down in particular. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But the main thing is that they kept Cal out of the end zone. And, you had multiple red zone trips that just ended with nothing. So, they had 5 red zone trips that ended in 6 points. Florida State only had 2 red zone trips and wound up with 7 points in that one out of those 2. So, I mean, that's really the ball game. Florida State basically bowed up when it came time for the red zone on the defensive side and kept Cal out of the end zone in those key spots. Now, Cal helped them with some key penalties down inside the red zone. But basically, the defense managed to win in the red zone, and that was the game. So, yeah, I mean, I think if I'm going to summarize the game as a whole, it's that this defense generally won its battles up front, had a number of other problems emerge at different points, but won its battles up front and won the battle in the red zone. And that's why they ended up winning the football game. Now, offensively, still, I want to say a work in progress, but that's probably too generous for what we're seeing at this point. It's just not a good offensive football team. And frankly, you take this team into, to play Clemson, to play Miami of Florida, and they're not going to be competitive playing offense like this. You're going to have to score points to beat teams. And, 14 points. Now, Cal had not given up more than 14 points this year. So Florida State hit Cal's average. But that's not so good, guys. I mean, it is a good Cal defense. They take the ball away at a very high rate. Florida State only turned it over one time, which was important. But you got to score more points than this. You got to be more efficient on offense as a whole. And there are just too many ways that this team offensively just cannot get out of its own way. I mean, DJ Uyunglele, 16 of 27, 59% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, which is a nice throw on that little, I think it was an inside fade. And then the 1 pick, which is a bad pick, but, Cal's been very, very good at those kind of takeaways this season, and they're well coordinated. You're sometimes going to get fooled, and I think he got fooled a little bit there. But yeah, I mean, you've just got to find ways to be more efficient. Now, overall, Lawrence Toafili, 17 carries, 80 yards, 4.7 average. That's not bad. You can live with that. Now, the problem is that there are way too many short, no gain type plays. I mean, here's the list of his runs on the day. 4, 1, 4, 2 for a touchdown, 7, 5, 12, 12. That's great. But then 2, 2, 5, 10, 2, 1, 7, 4, 0. I mean, that's not It's not bad, but you still want to be giving up less leakage in the backfield. You don't want these guys getting hit at the line of scrimmage, and there's too much of that against a team of the level of Cal. You should be able to do a little bit more than that. Cam Davis got banged up early. I think he got a stinger, actually. It looked like he came back wearing a new school cowboy collar type thing. But 7 carries, 25 yards, 3.6 per carry, and 5.06.0563. I mean, those are his carries. So really nothing. The problem there is just no real burst or explosive there getting to the second level. He actually made a lot of those carries. I mean, was getting hit at the line of scrimmage and dragging guys forward. But that's the problem. And 41 carries for a total of 107 yards. Now we need to do the advanced look there. Sack adjusted, 3 yards per carry. That's just not good enough. And again, if you're going to start DJ Uiagalelei, if you're gonna have him as your trigger man, you've got to be able to run the football better than this. You have to. You have to be able to dictate, run the football. I also think that this is a team that does need to take a few more deep shots. I mean, not far off from Malik Benson having a 70-some yarder, and I think they need to run that kind of concept. I think that was what their Oklahoma concept, but they've got to run that kind of concept 2 or 3 more times per game if possible. But the problem is that they've got to get fewer 3 and outs and give themselves more opportunities to be in the down and distance, to be able in the right part of the field and all of that, to be able to call that. And you look at their drive chart. First drive, 3 and out. Second drive, 8 plays, 60 yards, touchdown. Third drive, 12 plays, 62 yards, interception. 9 plays, 33 yards. 6 plays, 10 yards. 5 plays, 19 yards. And then turn it over on downs at the end of the half there. 3 and out. 3 and out. So they started the game with a 3 and out, and then they started the third quarter with 2 3 and outs. Then 12 plays for 79 yards and a touchdown. Then another 3 and out in the fourth quarter, and then the kneel it out final drive. I mean, y'all, that's something. I mean, and here's the other thing. The second half, Florida State had the ball 5 times. 5 possessions in the second half, including the last kneel down. That's wild. 11 drives total in this game, including that end of game kneel down. So you had basically 10 drives in this game. And that's just, I mean, the pace that's happening in Florida State's games right now is, first of all, it's not fun to watch. The football is, again, things look very constipated, and they just have to find a way to get more energy, a little bit more tempo into what they're doing. And, so much of this is sort of like a shooter in basketball who's in an absolutely ice cold streak where, you can't hit anything. And at a certain point, you've just got to stop thinking about it, stop trying to work on your form, and find ways to see the ball go in the basket. And right now, they've just got to see the ball get thrown and caught. They've got to see success enough to finally have a little bit of breakthrough and momentum. But I'm not sure where that's going to come from. And, the way things look right now, I don't think that there's a lot of easy answers on this team right now and on this offense. This game also did not convince me, did not change my view that they very seriously need to start looking at whether or not they need to play other options than DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback. With what you're putting out there, you're not going to win very many games this year if you keep scoring less than 20 points. You score 14 points, in all the rest of your games this year, how many wins do you have? 2, 3? I mean, maybe 4? You got to find a way to get wins, and that's going to mean you're going to have to manufacture some points some way else. And there are some limitations right now with what he brings to the table. And again, I'm looking at his numbers here: 16 to 27, 59% completion percentage, passer rating of 119. That's not horrible. But the feeling is that you just miss so many opportunities. And it's not just that, it's also in the running game. I mean, they had a couple zone reads where, first of all, he's a little late on the read, but he's so slow in the decision and so indecisive in terms of how he's running that they get him on the edge, and there's no burst, there's no yardage gain, and so teams actually can come downhill with the edge player on the zone read. They can come downhill with the edge player to play the running back, and then if he sees the quarterback pull, he can just play the quarterback too, because the quarterback isn't getting outside him on the read. And I have half a mind that just because I've seen Brock Glenn run that same thing and he's mobile enough to actually be a threat there, I have to wonder whether or not just the ability to do that means that somebody like Brock Glenn actually should get a look right now. And the other thing is, so if I'm assessing this, if I'm assessing where this offense is, I know that sack adjusted rushing per carry against Cal with 3.0 yards per carry. So that's not, you're not 2009 Alabama here running the football. But even with that, running game is still your best bet. So what you need to do is figure out how you can get the quarterback involved in your running game more to run more 11-man running game schemes and take a little bit of pressure off of the offensive line and the running backs in that, because you can't block at the tight end position very well. So what do? One thing you can do is get a guy that can run the concepts in the running game maybe a little bit more efficiently. And DJ was not efficient as a runner today. Hasn't been all year. Now, he's had a few decent carries on the inside. He's obviously been very good on the quarterback sneak stuff. But beyond that, he hasn't really brought a lot to the table there. But if that's where you're going to hang your hat, maybe Brock Glenn does bring more to the table there. The other thing is that in the passing game, what you really have become is a, boot flood and shot play team. That's really what you're looking at. And you're not hitting on your shot plays. Through 4 games, you've hit on 1 shot play. And that's really the calling card. That's what you were hoping to get out of him is some, you knew you were not going to have a high success rate in the short and intermediate area in terms of high completion percentage and all of that. But you did bank on getting some success on some shot plays and some big plays down the field. And you haven't really gotten that yet. So again, if you're just asking for a guy who can make some plays with his feet, get your team in the right play call, not make the wrong decision to hand it off into the wrong front, some of those things, and then just not do anything stupid, and then make a good throw down the field once in a while on a shot play. If that's all you're asking, I do wonder whether or not you might be able to get more than that, or at least that much, out of the next guy. Now, I'm not seeing him in practice every day. So it just may be that that's not a viable option. If it is, that's also really not good. But I think you in the next game, you have to come in and you have to have a quick hook. I mean, SMU scored what tonight? They scored 60 today. You're not likely to beat SMU scoring 14 points. Now, their defense isn't as good as Cal's, but you're going to have to score points. Next week, I think you have to have a quick hook if things continue to look this constipated and things don't move. Now, another thing that's worth noting, the drive that they looked the best in this game was the second drive of the first half, where they turned up the tempo a little bit. They got an initial first down, turned up the tempo a little bit, And DJ and the offense looked much more in rhythm than they've looked at any point this year. And I do wonder whether or not going more hurry up, if you can do it, going more hurry up and asking DJ to do things at a higher tempo might actually be something that gets him out of his own head and just playing ball where he can actually locate and play. And if that's the case, that's great. The problem with that is you can't run tempo until you get a first down. So you got to figure out ways to get that initial first down. And right now that's been a problem. So offensively, still a long way to go. And, you just don't have the reliable. I'll put it this way. Jimbo Fisher used to talk all the time about guys who change the scoreboard and how you can't really be successful on offense unless you have some of those guys who change the scoreboard. That really it's about that. And, I've seen people talking about this, that, looking at Florida State's offense over the past 5 or 6 years, with all other quarterbacks versus with Jordan Travis, and looking at the overall offensive numbers, and they're stark. Now, I will say it's not just about Jordan Travis, because Jordan Travis also overlapped with Benson and with Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and, a variety of playmakers. But the truth is, what we're looking at with this Florida State offense right now is we're looking at a collection of players where you go down the list and you say, okay, is this a guy who changes the scoreboard for you? Is he a guy who just, if you're on defense, you have to game plan for what this guy does, for his strengths, for what he brings to the table? Let's go down the list. DJU, Lawrence Toafili, Cam Davis, Sam Singleton, Ja'Kai Douglas, Kyle Morlock, Jalen Brown, Hakeem Williams, Malik Benson, Kentron Poitier. I just went through everybody who touched the ball on offense tonight. Which one of those guys do you hear and go, okay, that's a guy I have to worry about a little bit as a defensive coordinator? Like, I've got to tilt my coverage, or I have to make sure I'm keying on him as a ball carrier. I've got to make sure that if that guy gets I know if that guy gets in the open field, it's over. Which of those guys is the guy that you look at and you go, that's a scoreboard changer? I don't think there's one. At least there's not one that has demonstrated that so far this year, that they're that guy. This is a team that you can just go out and play defense. You can call your defenses as a defensive coordinator. You can call your pressure packages and try to take advantage of different protections and all sorts of things. You can get exotic because you're not worried about any specific player where, last year you go, okay, look, if we bring pressure, we're going to be one-on-one with Johnny Wilson or Keon Coleman or both. And that's going to be a problem. There's nobody here that you look at and you're like, like we have to make sure we've got an extra guy accountable here. You do wonder, can Hakeem Williams get there? He's shown some flashes at times, but he's still not there. Malik Benson has the speed to do that. Jalen Brown has the speed to do that, but neither's really done it. And, the other thing is, even if one of those guys could be that, they're not that with DJU. I mean, here's the thing. If you put Jameis Winston on this team, 2013, 2014 era Jameis Winston, I think all of a sudden, all those receivers are looking very different because they're getting thrown open. All sorts of things change in terms of the space that they're seeing because he's the guy that changes the scoreboard. The other thing, though, is if you took a Jeremiah Smith, somebody like that, and you put him on this team, all of a sudden, I think he'd be limited by DJU, but all of a sudden, all those other guys get ticked up a little bit, or a Travis Hunter. You put one of those guys on this team and they change the scoreboard, and all of a sudden, because defenses have to account for that guy, all sorts of other stuff starts to open up. The problem that they have right now on offense for this team is that they're not good at any one thing. The stuff that they're supposed to be best at, the stuff that they hang their hat on, they're not good at. And then the counters, that means that the counters that depend on those things also aren't really that great. To be good on offense, you always have to have some sort of identity. You have to have something you're good at. that then forces defenses to kind of deal with that, and then you can counter off of that. The best offenses have lots of things they're good at. This offense has nothing they're good at. They're going to have to find something they're good at. And I do think, the question you've got to find, the question you got to ask is, does changing the quarterback position, putting somebody that has a little bit more juice in quickness as a runner, maybe a little more energy out there, does that change what you can be in terms of being good at least one thing? Maybe that changes you to be a good enough running team because the quarterback run threat on the edge is better. Maybe. It's hard to know. But I think you're at the point where you're going to have to start pulling some levers, or this season, you're just not going to get any more wins because you've got to score to beat some of these teams, to beat pretty much all these teams on your schedule. Now, defensively, I thought Josh Farmer played like he was expected to play coming into the season tonight. Tonight, he looked like a, late first round, second round type pick at the defensive tackle position. Looked really, really good. I mean, that's a guy that leaves early. Nobody else out there looks like a guy that really belongs in terms of the leave early spot, even though, Pat Payton had a good day, had several tackles for loss, had 2 sacks? Looking at it now. He had 3 sacks, 3.5 tackles for loss. So, filled up the stat sheet. Still not persuaded that, if you grade him out and everything, he grades out or jumps off the tape like a first or second rounder should. But he played well. Marvin Jones Jr. had 2 sacks down the stretch. And you wonder, does that finally help the light bulb do more than flicker for that guy? He should have had 3. He had one where the quarterback was in his arms early in the game and just didn't get it. But I do get the sense that he's still thinking a lot and just doesn't go out and just play. And he needs to do that and to play physical football. But he's got a long way to go. But you look at this overall on the defensive line, they took care of business. On the back end, it was much more work in progress. Back end, they still gave up. Looking at the third down situation here, third down was not good enough. I mean, they got Cal. The average third down distance to go was 10 yards in this game. But Cal still went 5 of 15 on third down and went 3 of 8 on 3rd and 9+. That's third down passing. Cal was 6 of 8 for 73 yards and 3 first downs. They've got to find a way to figure that out and how to get off the field in those situations. Now, Mendoza made some really clutch throws. They did a good job of creating space. There's the one that was just absolutely infuriating where they had him penned in the pocket and then flushed him, and Nicholson was at the spy and let himself get blocked right out of the lane where he's supposed to be, and quarterback goes for 30 yards there down in the fourth quarter and puts them in position to potentially go ahead. There were just too many of those kinds of things. Third down conversions here. They had 2 first downs by rush on third down conversions, and the average yards per rush on those two, or average yards per rush on third down is 8.5. That's just, there's still a lot of work to do on that side of the ball too. I mean, if you look at the overall drive numbers, Cal's drive success rate was 68%. So was Florida State's. They only had 1 3 and out. Florida State had 4. The average yards gained per drive for Cal was 35. That's not great. Average number of plays per drive, 7. That's got to come down. I mean, Cal averaged 35 yards per drive. Florida State averaged 23. Again, this game came down to Florida State's defense taking care of business once it got down into the red zone. But things got down into the red zone way too much. All in all, much better against the run. They went against a really, really good pair of running backs. Jaden Ott is one of the best running backs in the conference, probably top 2 or 3 running backs in the conference. 4.6 yards per carry from him. He's a burner. They only let him have one 23-yarder, 16 carries for 73 yards. That's okay. That's not bad. Javian Thomas, 3.7 yards per carry. That's okay. That's not too bad. What they gave up too much of was 303 passing yards. Just way too much space on the back end and too many still missed communications between the safeties and backers and some of the match stuff. That's still got to get a lot cleaner. I did think the backers played better as a whole today than they have and triggered against the run much better than they have. But on the whole, still good enough to beat Cal, but, is this going to be good enough defense to win next week? I'm not sure about that. Is it going to be good enough to beat Clemson? Probably, not. No. Neither side of the ball. And it still doesn't look like a super well-coached team. And there's way too much celebration and all of this for routine-type stuff. Guys, and I understand right now they want to get back to having fun playing football, but at a certain point, you can't fake swag. You have to earn that stuff. You have to earn it first. You have to earn that kind of confidence. And that kind of confidence doesn't have to celebrate after every play. It's, no, I'm really that good. You have to earn that. And they haven't quite earned it. They haven't come close to earning it. It's still not a good football team. But 1-3 rather than 0-4, I can guarantee you Mike Norvell and his staff will take that every day of the week, because ultimately it's not about how much you win by in this game. What matters is, can you win the football game? Unless you're 2023 Florida State, in which case wins don't really matter. All right, that's all I've got for today. Go away now. If you've been enjoying this podcast, please leave a 5-star rating over at Apple Podcasts and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Post and repost episodes on social media and tell a friend. And if you haven't left a review in a while, do it again. It really does help the visibility of the podcast. Before we go, I'd also like to thank my advertising partners once more. That's EPR Creations, Luis Marquez of Momentum Realty in Jacksonville, Florida, Shenandoah Real Estate in the Research Triangle of North Carolina, Garage Makeovers, the #1 garage remodeling company in South Florida, and Justin Galloway of Benchmark Mortgage, serving Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky. You can also stop by the Unconquered Shop at unconqueredpodcast.com, where you can buy stickers, pins, magnets, t-shirts, and other swag. And thanks also to all those supporters over at Patreon, where I post video analysis and field questions for the podcast. I am especially grateful to those above the dynasty level. That is Andrew Garrett, Brian Leininger, Neil Cook, Casey Kidd, Chris Chartrand, Dave Blair, Hector Cartagena, Jack Horton, Jimmy Van, Jonathan Kennedy, Keith Cheney, Lee Caswell, Tyler Kashishke, Vince Calandra, and Bert Bertoldi. You all are far more generous than I deserve. I'm really grateful. Thanks to you all. This has been Unconquered with Doc Staples. I'm your host, Jason Staples. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support. I made this.